The sky that evening was painted in strokes of sorrow, all dusky rose and tired gold, the kind of light that doesn't linger long on this earth. The land, dry and cracked from a summer too long, gave off heat like an old man exhaling regret. Even the wind seemed careful not to disturb the hush that hung over the hills, and tucked near the edge of that silence, where the rocky ridges faded into flat grazing plains, sat a ranch that no one visited unless they were lost, or desperate, or both. Elias Callahan lived there, alone, as he had for 15 years, save a few cows, a skittish mule named Thorn, and memories that wouldn't quiet, no matter how long the days stretched. They called him the loner rancher, not out of meanness, just truth. He didn't drink with the men in town, didn't dance with the women, didn't smile unless it was for a newborn calf or the sight of rain. His voice was low, his heart lower, and the only thing folks ever saw him take pride in was the straight line of his fence and the way he never missed Sunday service, even if he always sat in the last pew. But that night, that soft-burning, copper-drenched night, the rhythm of his life changed, because that was the night the wind carried more than dust and dry tumble. It carried the scent of fire, the sound of a child's cough, and 2 figures curled up behind his barn, wrapped in worn deerskin and shaking like leaves afraid of their own shadows. He found them just after sunset. At first, he thought it was a coyote, the way one of them stirred in the hay, but when he stepped closer, boots crunching on brittle straw, a pair of eyes locked with his, dark, wild, unmoving. She couldn't have been older than 18, Apache by her clothes, starved by her bones. Beside her, curled like a pup, was a smaller figure, a girl maybe 10 years old, too tired to open her eyes. Her breath came sharp. Elias didn't speak, just knelt down slow and set a tin flask. Between them, water, he said, finally, not poison. The older one watched him like a cornered hawk. Then, without a word, she took the flask and tilted it to the child's mouth first. Only after the girl had her fill did she drink. Something in Elias's chest tightened, a feeling like memory, though he couldn't place it. He rose, walked toward the barn, and said without turning, "You can come in. The storm's coming." They didn't speak that first night. He gave them a corner of the bunkhouse and laid a blanket between his bed and theirs, not as a wall, but as a kind of silent kindness. He cooked stew from beans and leftover elk, left it on the stove. He mended a small boot that had nearly fallen apart and placed it quietly near the girl's head while she slept in the morning. The wind howled through the hills like it had unfinished business. The girls stayed, so did he. The older girl's name, he'd learn later, was Na. It meant mischief in a tongue older than the fences that split this land. But there was no mischief in her eyes, just silence and something deeper behind it, awaiting. The younger one barely spoke at all. Her name was Tala, which meant wolf, fitting, Elias thought. She followed Nate with the quiet intensity of a cub protecting its mother. Days passed the way they do on the prairie, sun rising without permission, setting without apology. The girls began to help. Nate fed the horses. Tala watered the garden, what little was left of it. They moved like they'd always belonged there, though never once did they act like it. Always a step back, always ready to flee. Elias didn't ask why they came, and they didn't offer. But small things spoke in place of stories. The way Tala would flinch when a branch snapped. The way Nate slept with her back to the wall, eyes open longer than any girl should have to keep them. The way she avoided mirrors, or the sight of her own bare skin. One afternoon, Elias spotted it. Nate was drawing water from the pump when her shawl slipped down her shoulder. There, stark and angry, across her tan skin, was a scar. Long, cruel, not from battle, but something worse, something personal, something chosen by another's hand. She noticed him noticing, pulled the shawl up, turned away, and Elias, who had asked no questions when his own brother returned from war, broken in mind and heart, said nothing now, because sometimes the asking wounds worse than the wound itself. By the fourth night, Elias found himself lingering longer at supper, watching the way Nate cut meat for Tala, how she whispered to her before sleep, the way her eyes sometimes softened when she thought no one looked, and in those moments, something old stirred in him, not lust, not desire, just the aching recognition of someone trying to stay whole in a world that tried to break her. He thought about his brother, how he once said, "We fight not to win, just to keep the soul from crumbling. That's enough some days." The fire crackled low. Outside, a coyote called to its kin. Inside, Elias sat near the window, carving a small horse from cedar. He used to make them for his niece, back when he had family. He placed the finished carving beside Tala's bed, didn't say a word, just nodded when Nate looked up. For a second, the corner of her mouth almost turned up almost at fifth morning. Nate stood near the corral, hair braided in 2 long ropes, her shawl drawn tight, wind curling dust around her boots. Elias came out with coffee. She didn't turn, but after a moment, her voice rose, steady and dry as the land. "You don't ask us why we came." Elias looked at her, then past her, toward the hills, then back again. "I figured if you wanted me to know," he said softly, "you'd tell me." A long silence stretched between them, then like a whisper torn from an old wound, "Maybe I will." And she walked back inside. The days grew quieter, not with absence, but with presence. That kind of quiet that settles only after fear has loosened its grip, just a little, like a wound testing air for the first time, like trust, budding from dust. Naiche had started, tending the chickens without being asked. She moved through chores the way a hawk moved through sky, deliberate, alert, watching everything. Tal followed her like shadow follows sun. She was blooming now, like spring peeking from the dirt, laughing sometimes, whispering to the mule, leaving wildflowers by the pump. Elias didn't ask where the flowers came from. Some things are better left as mysteries sent by kindness. The bunkhouse had grown warmer. Still no chatter, but warmth. They shared meals now, not just stew and bread, but little silences that didn't ache anymore. Elias started lighting the lantern earlier, not for need, but for them. He carved a second horse, this one with a braided tail, left it on the windowsill where Nate liked to sit. She didn't thank him, but the next day, she tied a string of dried berries above his cot. Then came the rain, gentle, steady, blessed. It fell like mercy on the dry roof, softened the land, called out the frogs. They sat inside that evening, each with a mug of strong tea, listening to the storm drum, its fingers on the tin above. It was Nate who spoke first, voice like a creek that hadn't flowed in years. "They called it a learning place," she said. No one moved. Tala's head rested on her sister's shoulder. Elias sat by the stove, sharpening his old pocket knife. Nate stared into the flame. "They said it would make us better, said we needed to be more like the whites. Cut our hair, took our songs, changed our names." She traced a fingertip along her mug. "Tala was too little. They let me carry her. I think she survived because she don't remember much." Elias didn't interrupt. He let the silence do what words couldn't. Nate continued, low and even. "There was a man there. Wore a blue coat. Called himself a teacher. Said my name meant nothing now. Called me Claire." She spat the name like ash. "He brought me into his office one night, gave me sugar, said I was pretty, said he'd teach me what men liked." Her voice wavered, not from weakness, from memory refusing to be tamed. Elias closed his knife slowly. His hand stayed still, but something behind his eyes began to burn. Nate pulled her shawl down her shoulder. The firelight caught it. The scar curved deep, ugly. "He kissed it first," she said. The storm outside grew louder. but not louder than the silence inside. Then he carved it. Said it marked me as his. Said the Apache gave girls like me to the white officers to keep peace. Her eyes flicked to Elias. Did they? Elias looked into her pain and didn't flinch. No, he said softly. They didn't. Tala shifted in her sleep. Nate gently tucked a blanket around her. She doesn't know, she whispered, about what he did. You ain't got to tell her, Elias replied. But if you ever do, I reckon she still see you as whole. The next day was bright, as if the storm had never come. Elias saddled his mule and rode into town. Said he needed nails, but brought back hard candy and 2 pairs of new boots, one small, one strong. Nate didn't say a word, but later, she washed his shirt and left it folded on his bed, neat as church linen. The rhythm deepened. Nate walked beside him while he mended fence posts. Tala learned to throw feed with both hands. They were still 3 people, with pasts too heavy for talking. But now, the silence between them felt like comfort instead of distance. One day, while riding along the canyon edge, Elias saw smoke in the distance. A traveler's fire, maybe, or trouble. He turned back early, at the ranch. May Doolin was waiting at the gate. May ran the mercantile in town, big-boned, opinionated, and nosy as a prairie dog in spring. She was the kind of woman who brought cinnamon rolls with gossip, baked inside. She held a basket and a frown. Heard tell you got company, she said. Elias stepped off his mule. They're just girls, needed shelter. May's eyes narrowed. Apache, girls. He didn't answer. May sighed. I ain't here to run nobody off. Just want you to know, folks, talkin', that old captain's been askin' after a runaway girl. Real specific scar on her shoulder. Elias froze. The heat of the noon. Sun vanished behind her words. Name's Wiles, she added. Captain Robert Wiles. Runs the reservation fort now. Some folks say he's changed. I say devils, just learn better manners. That night, Elias sat on the porch while the girls slept inside. He looked up at the stars, same ones he used to trace with his brother when they were boys, sleeping rough on cattle drives. He remembered a story James told him once, about men who branded horses too young. They try to mark M before the bone set, he said, and all they do is scar M wrong. Elias understood that now. The next day, Nate didn't braid her hair. She let it fall free, like a flag refusing to be lowered. Tal rode on Elias's shoulders while he filled the trough. For a moment, it looked like a family almost. That evening, as the sun melted behind the ridge, Nate found Elias in the barn. You knew him, she said. Wiles? Elias didn't answer right away. My brother served under him, he said finally. Said Wiles treated the native prisoners like animals. Made boys shoot children for fun. Nate's jaw clenched. Elias looked at her, really looked. Sorry I didn't stop him sooner. She nodded once. It ain't your wound. Don't mean I can't help carry it. Then, with a quiet he'd never forget, she stepped close, just close enough for her sleeve to brush his. She reached down and took his hand, and they stood like that, 2 people, shaped by pain, framed by golden light and the soft hush of forgiveness. But peace never stays long in the West. Not when a man like Wiles is riding with a paper in his pocket and the law behind him. The wind shifted. It came down from the mesa that morning, dry, restless, whispering like it knew things folks weren't ready to hear. Birds flew low. Horses pawed dirt without reason. Even Thorn, the old mule who didn't care if the world burned, kept close to the barn. Elias felt it before he saw it. The kind of tension that comes before thunder, or blood. Nate had started leaving her hair down most days. She braided it now, only when she was thinking too hard, or trying not to feel too much. That morning, as the sun broke across the plain, she braided it tight. Her fingers moved like prayer. Her eyes stayed far. Tala chased a chicken and laughed. So loud the mule brayed in protest. But Nate didn't smile. She was listening to the wind. Midday. Dust curled on the horizon. Not storm dust. Rider dust. Elias stood at the edge of the field, hand shading his eyes. 5 men. One at the front in a blue coat that shimmered like a lie. Nate stepped beside him. Saw the coat. Saw the man. And her hands balled into fists. Captain Robert Wiles dismounted like he owned the earth beneath his boots. His face was ruddy with comfort, eyes cold with entitlement. He looked at Nate as if he'd found a misplaced coin. Didn't even blink at Elias. "Well now," he said, "ain't this a surprise?" Elias didn't answer. Nate didn't move. Wiles stepped closer. "You've been missed, girl," he said to Nate. His voice was syrup and sand, thick and grating. "You belong to the reservation. You belong to me." Elias stepped forward, slow, solid. "She doesn't belong to anybody." Wiles looked him up and down, amused. "I've got paperwork. Treaties. Agreements made with tribal elders. She's marked, ain't she?" His gaze flicked to Nate's shoulder. Elias's voice dropped, steady as thunder before rain. "She was branded against her will. That ain't ownership. That's a crime." One of Wiles's men shifted uneasily. The other looked away. But Wiles smiled wider. "Don't matter how it happened. The world don't care about the how, just the papers." He pulled out a folded document and waved it like a preacher's Bible. "See here? Rightful custody. I could have the girl chained by nightfall. The little one too, if she's with her." At that Nate moved fast as breath. She stepped in front of Tala, who'd come running at the sound of shouting. Elias's jaw tensed. "You're not taking them," Wiles laughed. "Loud. Too loud. You think you can stop me, rancher?" "I can. By what authority?" "By mine." For a moment, all was still. The kind of still that made every sound louder. A horse snort, a creaking saddle, a bird crying in the sky. Then voices behind them, May Dot, and 2 others from town. Then 5 more. Then 10. They weren't armed. They weren't loud, but they came, quietly, steadily, like a tide of decency rolling in. They didn't say a word, just stood beside the barn, along the corral, near the gate, facing Wiles, eyes steady. Wiles looked around. His smirk slipped. "What is this?" he spat. May stepped forward. "Justice," he sneered. "Bunch of dusty farmers think they can tell a government officer how to do his job." "No," May said. "But we can watch you real close while you try." Nate took a step forward, then her voice was steady, her eyes fierce. "You branded me like cattle, told me my name meant nothing, took what wasn't yours." She pulled her shawl down, showing the scar. Let it shine in the sun like a badge, made of pain. "You said I was a gift from my people, but I was never yours to take." Wiles's face twisted. "You little savage." Then came the sound, a fist meeting flesh. Elias had moved fast, not like a cowboy, but like a man whose soul had finally had enough. Wiles stumbled backward, nose bleeding. Silence. Even the horses stilled. One of the lawmen reached for his weapon. Elias didn't. He just looked him in the eye. "Go ahead," he said. "But if you draw, you best be sure you're on the right side." The man hesitated, then lowered his hand. Wiles growled, wiping blood from his face. "You'll pay for this, Callahan. All of you." "No," Elias said. "You will." The sheriff arrived late. He was always late, but today, maybe that was for the best. When he asked what happened, a dozen voices spoke at once. "He hit her once," said May. "Years back." "I saw the scar," said another. "He came with threats," someone added. She stood her ground. The sheriff looked at Wiles, then at Elias, then at the girl with the scar, who didn't flinch anymore. He folded his arms. "I see no crimes here," he said. "'Cept maybe a punch that was rightly earned." Wiles left with his men, dust trailing behind them like shame. Later that night, Elias sat on the porch. Nakas stepped out beside him. No words at first, just stars, and the soft clink of crickets, and the wind, finally calm. "You hit him," she said after a while. He nodded. She stared into the dark. "You didn't have to." "I know." A pause. "Thank you." Elias nodded again, looked at her, gentle. "I won't ever ask you to be mine," he said. She turned to him. "But if you choose to stay." Nate reached out then, laid her hand over his, and for the first time since the storm brought her here, she smiled. Inside, Tala whispered to the little cedar horse on her shelf. "You're safe now," she said. But she wasn't talking to the horse. The morning came slow, not because the sun was shy, but because the land seemed to hold its breath after what had passed the day before with fists and scars, and the town finally standing upright. The silence felt heavier, but sweeter, too. Elias Callahan woke before the rooster, not out of habit, but something else, a feeling in his bones, like maybe the world had tilted back toward rightness just a little dot in the bunkhouse. Nate was already up. She wasn't braiding her hair. She wasn't hiding the scar. She was watching the sunrise with her hands wrapped around a mug and her feet bare on the floor, as if she trusted the earth again. That morning, they worked the land like it was any other day, but it wasn't. It was the first day. Nate didn't flinch at the sound of hooves. It was the first day Tala ran through the grass, arms out wide, pretending to be a bird. And it was the day Elias started drawing up plans, not for more fence, but for a cabin, not for cattle, for family. Still, word traveled faster than truth, and while Wiles left the ranch, beaten and bitter, he did not leave alone. He went to his superiors, filed charges, told lies with smooth ink, tried to turn mercy into disobedience, tried to turn a scar into a signature, and by the end of the week, the army came knocking again, but this time, with men, with wagons, with intent. Elias heard the hoofbeats just after supper. 12 riders, a government wagon, and Wiles at the back, lips curled like a man who'd finally found the right paper to make the wrong thing happen. Tala was inside, asleep. Nate was standing at the gate when they arrived. She didn't run, she didn't shake, she simply stood, as tall as the hills behind her. "Miss Nate," the officer began, stepping down from his horse. "We've orders from the Bureau of Indian Affairs to retrieve you. Papers are signed. The branding is considered evidence of tribal agreement. We're told you were assigned." Elias stood beside her now. "She wasn't assigned," he said. "She was assaulted." The officer's face twitched, but his orders were his orders. "Sir, we're not here to debate. We're here to enforce. And I'm here to protect," Elias said. Wiles stepped forward, pleased with himself. "She's mine, Callahan. This paper says so." Nate stared him down. "That scar isn't a brand," she said, voice like thunder tucked beneath silk. "It's a warning for any man who thinks he owns what breathes." The townsfolk came again, faster this time, dozens, some with torches, not to burn, but to light truth. May Doolan stood front and center, arms crossed, like she dared God to challenge her. "She's under this town's protection," May said. "She don't belong to no army, no treaty, and sure as hell not to you." The officer looked around. He saw no rifles, no barricades, just people, solid, still, eyes that wouldn't look away this time. Elias stepped forward. "If you take her, you better chain me too." Nate placed a hand on his shoulder, then stepped past him, walked right up to the officer, pulled her shawl aside, revealed the scar, not as shame, but as proof. "This is what he did," she said. She pointed at Wiles. "This is what you'll be defending if you take me. A man who used war to claim girls. A man who taught us that silence was survival." Tears didn't fall from her eyes. They never did. But the officer blinked like he'd just seen something truer than orders. Wiles scoffed, shoved forward. "You listen to her, and you're a fool." She's a savage. He didn't finish the sentence. Because this time, it wasn't Elias who struck him. It was Naich open palm, across the face. Wiles stumbled, but this time, no one helped him up. The officer looked around again, at the scar, at the child in the window, watching at the quiet fury on every face. Then he folded the papers and spoke clear and loud. No retrieval will happen today. Wiles shouted, threatened, promised, but no one listened. He was escorted back to his horse. He rode out alone, and no one waved. Goodbye, peace, didn't fall like rain. It came slowly, softly, like snow, melting in spring. A week passed, then another, and soon the cabin Elias built stood beside his own, small, solid sunlit. Naiche filled it with wildflowers and songs. Tala hummed in her sleep. They still lived as neighbors, still took it slow, because healing, like love, wasn't something you rushed. One evening, Elias brought over a bowl of stew. Naiche opened the door, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes calm. He handed her the bowl. She took it. Didn't break the silence. Then he said, careful and steady, I won't ever ask you to be mine, but I'll spend the rest of my days making sure you know you ain't anyone else's. She nodded, then leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Later, Tala found a note under her pillow, written in shaky, honest handwriting. It said, you are not what they did to you. You are what you survived, and what you choose to become. She carried it with her for the rest of her life. In the Old West, there were scars no one saw, and scars that were made to be seen. But some folks, the brave ones, they didn't just cover wounds. They built homes around them, and sometimes, healing doesn't come with a cure. It comes with company. If this story filled your heart, even a little, leave a comment, friend. Tell us where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you believe in kindness over cruelty. And subscribe for more stories like this, where silence is broken not by guns, but by gentle hands and brave truth. Because sometimes, the loneliest hearts build the safest homes.